Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever. HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hightrustalliance.net. Archer empowers organizations to manage multiple dimensions of risk on one platform with on-premises and software-as-a-service offerings, and quickly implement industry-standard processes and best practices for advanced risk management maturity, informed decision-making, and enhanced business performance. Learn more at archerirm.com.
Marco.
Diana.
Polo.
No, you're supposed to say Sean. That's how it goes. I guess you're new to this game, but this is how we usually start the conversation, and then we dig in. And this is fun. This is new, Sean. We have a new co-host.
We have a full house here today, and we're, as you pointed out, Marco, we're going to be digging up into the cloud.
We're flying up instead of digging down. We're flying up.
That's right. And we're going to be looking at a book today, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff on cloud, no doubt. I don't think there's much on, if anything, on until this book anyway, on threat hunting in the cloud. So maybe it's clamming or fishing in the cloud. I don't know what the analogy is going to be, but we have two of the three co-authors with us, and Diana actually wrote the foreword for the book, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're going to dig into this topic, why it's important, what's in the book, who should read it, all that good stuff. And Abbas Kudrati and Binil Pillai, thanks for joining, and let's have some fun with this conversation.
Pleasure.
All right, so let's get it started. And Abbas, first of all, we met, it seems, million years ago.
I know.
And we had actually a really cool conversation in Singapore with Diana as well. So it's kind of like a family reunion. And you brought one of the co-author of the book. So what I would like to start with, it's from the beginning, which is the best part and the best place to start, which is, Abbas, a little introduction about yourself, then maybe you pass the ball to Binil, and then we dig into the why and the how of the book.
Sure, Marco. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Abbas Kudrati. I'm a Chief Cybersecurity Advisor for Microsoft APEC, based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm one of the co-authors for the book which we created for threat hunting in the cloud. Over to you, Binil.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Binil from Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, and I'm responsible for driving partner strategy and business development worldwide for security, compliance, and identity. And I'm one of the authors for this book. Thank you.
And you had a third co-author. Who wants to give Chris his props, even though he's not on?
Yep, I can talk about Chris. So Chris Peiris, who is one of the lead author for this particular book, idea came along with Binil and Chris together, and he used to work for Microsoft. Now he works with AWS, based in Canberra, in Australia.
Nice. So why this topic? Why this book? Why now?
Yes, so interesting. So both me and Chris had we worked together in the past for Asia Pacific region when I was in Singapore. And so we used to connect pretty often to understand where cybersecurity is heading to and what are the challenges the customer is facing at the field level. So at one point, we realized the fact that many customers wants to go to multi-cloud platform and leveraging Microsoft, AWS, and many more. And how do they prevent and protect from a threat hunting standpoint, from threat standpoint? So they don't have a unique solution or single solution to really manage multi-cloud platform from a threat hunting standpoint. So that was one of the key driver for us to look at it and consider, hey, how do we really respond to that market question or customer question to provide some clarity as well as from perspective to really consider, hey, here is the framework that you can leverage, even if you consider a multi-cloud platform for your data and for your end customer. And this is giving you a much better scenario and technical know-how to really develop, right? That's one side of it. The other side, I've been working in Microsoft HQ for new product development for cybersecurity, and threat hunting was one of the early discussion came into the consideration around 2017 timeframe. And it was very prominent that this is a very hot topic and we don't have a clear articulation of what's the solution for the majority of the customer worldwide. So that giving me a little bit of pressure to consider, hey, let's give some clarity and bring that to the everyone as a field audience, not only for Microsoft, but also for external audience, including those who are looking for developing their career in Microsoft, in cybersecurity, to learn and leverage this threat hunting model for a long-term career development standpoint. So we put that frame and developed the scope of this particular book and talked to the Wiley, and then everything became a history.
Great. Diana, actually, I was just going to pass the ball to you because at this point, you're the most qualified of the three co-hosts because you know a little bit about the book already. So what's your first take on this?
Well, my first take is that it's a very, very needed book. I was thrilled when Abbas and Binil and Chris came and told me that they were writing this book because it's a book that has been missing from the literature, and it's really a critical book. And that actually touches on something that Binil just said that I'd like to hear the author speak on, which is talking about careers and people's careers in threat hunting, because I've heard from a number of people that they love threat hunting on-prem, but they find it boring or too challenging in the cloud, which is sort of interesting because that's kind of both sides of boring or too hard. I was wondering why is it so different to threat hunt in the cloud versus on-prem? What makes it different? And then how is that even made even tougher when we talk about threat hunting multi-cloud?
Yeah. So my pitch on this, I have been a CISO for a number of years and used to operate security operations center and a SIEM solution on the on-premises. And when time came where people were started moving towards cloud, and that's where the need came in, it was very costly for me to run an on-premise SOC and leverage all the data or logs which I have it on the cloud. So there was a need to move towards the cloud. And additionally, if you look at it, the SME market and a medium and enterprise market, they all try to leverage either an on-prem SIEM or an outsourced SIEM, and they don't have that kind of a hunting capability. And they're looking at the kind of threat we are seeing today, like human-operated ransomware and continuous phishing and the attacks what we get on the cloud. You have to elevate your internal process to add an additional layer of service, which we call threat hunting. And as Binil and Diana were saying, it's one of the career opportunity as well for individual. What are you doing in your SIEM? What services you are providing? And typically what we see is either the log monitoring, log analysis, pen testing, and threat and vulnerability assessment. The next level to go to the maturity of your SOC or a SIEM process is having a proactive threat hunting. That is where you will be able to find all the bad actors which are been there in your environment for 90 days minimum, as the research says, right? So that was a need. I thought, okay, those are the good stories. And coming from that experience SOC operating model, which I had done in my past, I thought it's worth sharing that kind of a stories and have a case study within the book. And we have quite a few case studies which we added in the book as well, the real life story.
Yeah, just to add on to Abbas, I think as we called out in the book, threat hunting is a little bit of science and a little bit of art, right? And the human element is the one actually connecting the dots to really make it happen for enabling security for the organization, governments, and eventually for consumers, right? I think that's where, Dana, we walked in and looked at it. Basically, how do we bring people on the field, right, to understand this as well as learn about this even particularly for those who wanted to build a career. And as Abbas pointed out, there's a huge, we all know the fact, the scarcity on the relevant resources to drive not only threat hunting, but also all up cybersecurity. And related to the point, SOC, I think where we see a huge opportunity nowadays, the partners and everyone in cybersecurity offers endpoint detection services to the end customer. And they're likely to expand this more with a threat hunting capability in the future. And there is a huge spike for the need of new resources to walk in. And that's where we wanted to really encourage the fresh university graduates to look at this book as a Bible for them to learn and understand from the current scenario standpoint. They don't need to look at what happened 2 years ago, what is happening right now. And this book bring that up-to-date information for them to understand the context and immediately step into the market to support and build their career accordingly. And that's where we're trying to bring the storyline more visible and up-to-date.
And I'm interested, and perhaps the book helps with this in some way, but is it possible and does it make sense for people with existing threat hunting experience to read this book and transition into threat hunting in the cloud? Or are the things on-prem so specific and so tied to on-prem technologies that this move is too complex for them? And we're only looking at new people who have no luggage or baggage on-prem moving to the cloud, or is it just me thinking strange here?
No, I think that's a good question. So basically, if you look at the book, we are kind of bringing one framework to leverage for all kind of cloud platform, which is MITRE, right? MITRE framework. And that's actually the core, which is basically for people who knows cybersecurity, they know about MITRE framework. So we are trying to propose that as a fundamental framework and look at what are the tactics and techniques they can use it irrespective of what cloud platform they are. So the journey, the message that we're trying to come up with in the book is basically those who are in the field, they understand cybersecurity, but how do they play the role in a multi-cloud platform using the framework? That's the first part. The second part is basically where if you wanted to encourage both, not only from newcomers, but also board of directors to understand why they should prioritize threat hunting part of cybersecurity strategy to really protect their organization from a long-term standpoint. So we are connecting the dot within the organization at enterprise level, keeping the responsibility not only from the SOC operation team or cybersecurity team, but also from the board of directors perspective, and making sure we have a cohesive story and framework to leverage and build the platform and capability, human elements, and technical architecture, everything from there. So that's we're taking the journey throughout the book. It's a life journey, where to start and how do we go. And like Abbas pointed out, we have some cool case studies, which is real case studies from the field. We captured in that. We tied that directly with the tactics and techniques we explained for MITRE framework. So people understand how to contextualize. If I want to take this particular tactic and techniques, and what are the things I need to worry about? And what can I learn from the case study? So I can really prevent making the case more solid from a cybersecurity and threat hunting strategy that I want to develop for my team or organization. Abbas, go on, please.
Yeah, Diana, after you. I have a few things, but after you.
Abbas, I was going to ask you specifically about, for some of those case studies, any examples of where they really intersect very well with the MITRE ATT&CK framework so that they really show that connection that Binil was explaining.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you another interesting thing. What I see in the region as a part of my role and being a past experience as a CISO, I see that threat hunting is kind of a luxury service. And it is mostly afforded by the top companies, big banks and big telcos, those who are running a large on-premise as well as cloud environment. And they use lots of point solution for that and have a dedicated team. And these are the only people who does kind of a proactive threat hunting. It is not affordable as by small, medium company. So by introducing this book, what we are trying to highlight to all segment of the market, including small, medium, large, or even a smallest company who has 5 people in IT, they can leverage solutions which are built on cloud and have a native capability. So they don't need to buy a separate solution. You have the tools from Microsoft, such as Defender and Sentinel, which has a built-in capabilities of threat hunting. So you don't buy a separate service or anything else. You don't need to buy a separate thread feed. Of course, you can have more thread feed as per your industry requirement. If you are in the banking, then you can get feeds from the banking kind of a thing using taxi and other methods to bring those external thread feed. Otherwise, they can leverage what vendors provide. For example, Microsoft has more than 40 billion trillion signals on a daily basis, and we get that thread feed within our product. So they can use this native product and do the threat hunting proactively as well. Talking about the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and that framework is very well known by all red team, blue team, as well as pen tester. Yeah. They always try to look at within their SOC as well as map what kind of attack techniques and things are being used by them. So we have mapped all these tactics, including our case study, which we have, which are some of the real life case studies I had gone through in my previous role. How an attacker had got access to an account of an executive who did not have a multi-factor authentication, and they got hang on to one of the exchange mailbox or his mailbox, and from there they created a forward rule within the mailbox. So any email going back and forth, the CFO, that attacker is getting a copy, and how he changed the PDF invoice and sent it back to the customer, and the money was transferred to his account. So there are many such interesting real-life case studies which I had gone through in my career. Those have been added and mapped with the MITRE ATT&CK framework and showed them what they could have done differently to protect against these kind of threats and attacks.
So I'm curious from a business perspective, there is one thing, Abbas, that you said that caught my attention. That is a luxury service. I'm going to stop right there. Explain me a little bit more about that. And if I'm a business that don't have the luxury of threat hunting in the cloud, what do I do?
Now you have, because as I said, now the products are available. I'm talking about big companies who are leveraging or hiring a dedicated team of threat hunters as doing a proactive service, because they can't afford to do reactive. Small, medium, and enterprise company, they would hire one of the big four consultants. They say, okay, come and do the assessment for us. They call it proactive assessment service. And if there is nothing, happy, once in a year, they will call them. It used to be like a pen testing service 5-10 years back, right? You used to only get it done once in a year, just to take the compliance requirement or just to get an assurance. Threat hunting was similar a few years back, but now you can leverage proactively and start hunting because the threats are real and they are there within the environment. What you learn from Colonial Pipeline and SolarWind and many other attacks where attackers are already in the network. Assume breach mindset, as we call it, right?
Got it. So are all cloud created equal, Binil? Once you know how to threat hunt in one, can you do it in other clouds?
Yeah,
jumping from one cloud to another.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the how much you are capable of building that, leveraging that framework, right? So that's the fundamental. So if you have the right framework, I think the cloud platform is not that much relevant here, because you know how to use the framework respective of the platform you're playing with. That's key. The second thing, I'll really rank it for the human elements of threat hunting. We have a dedicated session for that, about human elements of threat hunting, because that's key. You need to have the right resources in place to analyze the data points so that you can take the right action based on the insight you collected from different tools and techniques, right? So those two are fundamental. Use the right framework, build the right team, and if you build a right strategy to drive this, I think you are more successful in this journey. And again, the book we are providing it's a practical guide answering two questions. What is the framework and where to start and how to really go from there to really complete the journey or transform the journey to make it much better. And to the point, this is applicable both for enterprise as well as small, medium segment customer. Like they have a much low capacity to manage this kind of complex scenario from a threat hunting standpoint. And we are trying to cover some elements. How do we make them special with the right level of support required, not only from product vendors, but also from partners, basically, who can support SMB customer to really do a great job with a limited investment size they could afford. So that's an interesting context that we try to cover in this book.
And really useful, so that we can take this from, as Abbas was mentioning, it is a luxury for very well-funded companies and make it something accessible to all, which is great. One thing I was wondering about is when we go into the different clouds, we have the different native tools. Maybe we need to learn the names, but it's fundamentally the same. But when we extract that data out from those clouds, how do you normalize and get a picture of your whole organization? If you've got some stuff in GCP and some stuff in Azure, how do you threat hunt and bring all that information together in one? And Abbas, you're nodding, so let's start with you on that one.
Absolutely. Very, very relevant question, Diana. And that again goes back to Marco question, right? Can you jump from one cloud to another cloud for doing the hunting? And that's where
you ride the lightning. That's how you do it, Abbas. You ride the lightning.
So that's where the data feed comes into play, right? I talked about the data feed from the hunting queries point of view. But for example, and I want to talk about the product in this case, although I don't want to. But for example, Microsoft Sentinel, right? It's a cloud-native SIEM, SOC, and a SOAR, UEB and SOAR platform. Now, that is a multi-cloud and a hybrid environment as well. So you can take a feed from Google as well as AWS into the same Sentinel. And now that you have a hunting query, which we use, example, Custos query language, KQL. That's what the query language Microsoft has created. Using that hunting query language on Microsoft Sentinel, you are able to hunt proactively, either using an automation, using playbooks and runbook, what we have. We have Jupyter notebooks and many other advanced feature capability. So you don't need to have a large team. You create the runbook and a playbook, make it automated, and it will go and hunt proactively against all your resources. Could be on-premise, could be Microsoft, could be Google, or could be AWS. And you can add more feed into the cloud as well. So it depends upon the services you are leveraging and how much automation and AI you are building into the capability for doing the proactive threat hunting.
And just to add on to that point, Dan, I think we kind of called out that specific, you mentioned the point in our last chapter, which is Future of Threat Hunting, where we called out the evolution of threat hunting tool, right? And as Abbas pointed out, the SIEM tool, in some of the SIEM tool doesn't provide the entire capability for threat hunting today. I think that's the future going to be, right? Every product vendor wants to really fine-tune their SIEM tool to extend that with more threat hunting capability. To the point you mentioned, pull all the information and a centralized platform or location, whatever you call it, and do the analysis to really make a meaningful outcome, right? And use it proactively to detect and protect your environment. So that's an interesting journey that we look at, that every product vendor is going to focus. Some of them have Sentinel is an amazing one, no question on that. But I think every other product vendors will definitely focus to sharpen their tool to bring up to that stage. And that's going to be an interesting game.
It is. It's like we finally got SIEMs pretty well deployed on-prem, but now we need the cloud SIEMs to be able to pull data. Yeah.
It's funny. I just did another podcast on that topic. I want to point out that you guys weren't messing around with this book. I mean, there's a chapter of chapters. If I counted correctly, 11 pages of contents that you're listing out in your table of contents, which then leads you to the immense amount of data within the book. And talk to me about the structure, because it looks like you first set the stage, as you pointed out, Binil, about the framework, right? Yep. Giving some context that you could use throughout the rest of the book as a guide, with then very specific situations that you describe, how to map that back to the framework, mapping it to a case study as well, which to me gives this thing so much teeth. This isn't a fluffy book by any stretch of the imagination. So talk to me about how that came together, because it's page after page after page of all these things tied to AWS and Microsoft and GCP and all back to MITRE. So how did you come up with that strategy, and what was the driver for that?
Sure. So fundamentally, like I said, we wanted to really focus on the framework at the beginning of the book. That's where we spent a lot of time in terms of take the right framework, that's first step, and identify the right tactics and techniques. That's where myself, Abbas, and Chris, we brainstormed many times to make sure that we pick the right tactics and techniques that's applicable for many enterprises and small, medium customers today. In the real,
even just that.
Yeah.
If it was a book just on that,
yeah,
it would be extremely valuable. And then you go further.
Correct. So we set the stage, and I think in the chapter 3 framework, and we handfully selected 5 specific tactics and related scenario, which is techniques under each of these scenario tactics. That was the first step. So we explain it, what it is, and how does it really happen in the real world with the case studies that Abbas explained earlier. So that was covered in chapter 3. So at least just introduction of framework, introduction of tactics, and introduction of techniques, applicable techniques. And then we jump into a deeper side where we went all the way down on AWS side on those techniques and tactics. And also we went to Azure deep down for those techniques and tactics. Those are the dedicated heavy part of the book. If you look at the middle portion of the book, at least around 200 plus pages are dedicated to those two sections. And then come to the tail end, we look at the other potential cloud providers. GCP is a good example, Alibaba, and a few others, Oracle. And just want to make sure how they are transforming and evolving in the threat hunting side of it. Again, with the comparison with the framework that we had in mind, which is MITRE framework. So we just gave perspective how these other players in the market are developing and evolving in their threat hunting framework, or threat hunting tactics. And we explained that in those chapters at the tail end. And then we ended up with a specific indication what could be the potential future of threat hunting from an evolution standpoint, and what are the other key technology could really influence threat hunting in the future, right? So that we captured in the last chapter by giving a very clear perspective from all of the authors' point of view. What are those technologies? How will that impact? And including we made some comments about potential regulations could happen in the future. Regulators may come back to us saying that, hey, you need to have a minimum threat hunting capability in your organization, and these are the guidance. This could happen in the future. So that's where I think we try to conclude the session in the whole book, giving a what's in a future view of our point of view or our thinking.
Yeah. If I must summarize it, it's in a 3 separate sections. Part 1, it's talk about what is threat hunting and why. Part 2 is the main meat or the how part of it, where we are going detailed technology wise in terms of Microsoft and Azure capabilities and AWS capability, which is chapter number 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. 4 and 5 for Microsoft, 6 and 7 for AWS. And the part 3 is what next and the future, what is available. So 3 parts in the book.
All right, so we're going to get to the part of the future as the last question, because I like to go in a chronological order. What do we need to look at now? So while you're writing the book, based on your experience, for the people listening now, what should we scare about in the cloud? What is there that we need to hunt nowadays?
Okay, of course, hunting is all the bad stuff, and adversaries is what we need to look for. But period. I mean, that's what we are looking for, right? And again, going back to the assume breach mindset, which is where we are. Everyone is thinking towards that. It's not if, it is when. So you don't know how long the adversary is within your environment, and if you are not doing a hunting proactively, you are missing that particular visibility in your environment. That sooner or later it will pop up. So if you are not doing it, you are one step behind the attackers, I would say.
So one thing that you said in the book is that threat modeling is the heart of threat hunting. And Marco, threat modeling is when you ask exactly the question you just asked, what could go wrong? So Binil, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about why is threat modeling the heart of threat hunting?
And maybe what are the big animals you're hunting there too? The scary one.
I want to point out that a threat modeling expert asked that question, by the way. I love it.
Yeah, that's a very important one. Basically, it's kind of looking at the maturity of the organization, right? That's very important because, like I said, this book is a guide for any kind of audience. I mean, especially from enterprise or consumer or SMB standpoint, right? So we wanted to give it opportunity for them to analyze where the maturity of my organization in threat hunting and cybersecurity in general, right? So we we call that out a specific maturity model for them to analyze where they stand. Are they stand in the lower side of the maturity, or maybe somewhere in midterm, or maybe in higher side of security? And then they can make a decision, how do I leverage the framework to start my journey, right? That's where we are trying to blend together. So when they know their maturity, they can better adopt the framework, where to start and how to really take the baby step, or how do I accelerate my step to really better over the next 24 months or 12 months, right? And that's where I think the maturity model is so important, which is so critical for every organization to really consider. And we call that out very well, and I think pretty much easy to adopt with a little bit of change management function within the organization level. So one last thing I want to highlight, basically on the feature side of threat hunting, right? So there are many technology we call out in the feature side of technology. Feature of threat hunting. So it depends on the maturity of the organization, which one should be the right one they can consider. We don't want that a organization which is probably number one, number two maturity look at an advanced technology for the future development, which is not really practical. So we want to give an opportunity based on what maturity they are, and they can really make a right investment to advance their cybersecurity, especially threat hunting capability, to put in the right context.
And before we have a special part that we're going to add to this or include as part of this conversation. But before we do that, I want to point out the depth here, and I can't do that. Only you guys can. So maybe pick a favorite scenario, and we won't belabor this point with many different use cases. But is there one use case that stands out where it applies to pretty much any organization that should be threat hunting, that you can say, here's how to look at this particular problem? Something from the book to kind of tease folks with.
I'm thinking of a case study. I'll give you again a real life example. So I was a CISO for one of the organization, and before or just when I joined the company, they didn't have anything. Forget the threat hunting part. They didn't even had the normal SIM solution or a SOC solution. They had some basic logging which they were doing it. And the scenario came into a place where one of the employee was been targeted, or his or her account was compromised, and they didn't even know that their account password has been breached or been known to others. And of course, there was some basic hygiene check not been done, including the multi-factor authentication. And that particular person had also one of the transportation card which we use here in Australia or some other part of the world where they were using. But the scenario, what happened is there were multiple cards being used under that person account. And it was very difficult for us to identify that who is harvesting or creating that kind of a database from the backend system and creating and making the whole fake cards and selling into the dark web. So there was a need to understand all our supply chain as well, that who are other people who are accessing this kind of data and all. And there were multiple parties involved in that part. So if you map it back to your MITRE ATT&CK framework, we need to understand that which account was used or what technique was used for identifying or escalating the privilege initial account. What technique was used for getting the data out? What technique was used for doing other activities as per the framework. So by creating that, by utilizing that MITRE ATT&CK framework and doing the manual hunting, it took number of months to identify what went wrong and where all the adversaries are having their foothold into the environment. But after weeks and months of investigation, we were able to identify all that and fix and plug all the open holes what we had it. And then we started looking at it that no, we need to correct log ingestion from all the various places and have a proactive way of utilizing it based on behavior. That if somebody's accounts is being used outside Australia, then there's something is wrong. And we want that kind of an alert on that and go and further investigate on that. So lots of use cases were created out of that. And a lot of automation has been done because it was not humanly possible to look at everything every day in the morning, which used to be 6 years back. If you ask me, this is what my team used to do. SOC operation team, they come in on site, they start the work at 9 o'clock till 9 to 11. What they use is just go through everything, we call it start of the day checklist. They do everything and only then go for a first coffee break. But you can't do it today. The amount of log we ingest today, if they start doing manual checklists from morning to evening, they will be doing only that. Forget about everything else. So that's where you need to bring in the resources like use cases, create the run book and a playbook for the most common attack techniques, and let it run automatically. By the time you come in the morning, the dashboard is ready for you to go and use your human intelligence to dig further on that part. Yeah? I hope that answers your question, Sean.
Yes, or organizing the chaos.
Yes, organizing the chaos.
That's what artificial intelligence is for, right? So.
Well, I think that can amplify the chaos if you don't have the model and the framework to
What are the framework?
Well, yeah. If you're
back to riding lightning there, Marco.
If you build it with bias, that is a chaotic artificial intelligence, they're going to have a problem with that. So let's jump into the future with that. So you said your last chapter, a couple of chapters, they are about what are we facing coming ahead of us. What's that?
So this in the last chapter we called out some of the specific technology that could potentially influence the threat hunting, technology in the future, or the way we are doing threat hunting, and we called out some specific examples there. So a quantum computer may be one of them, would potentially influence. The other one is AI, which is going to be hugely influenced because once we pull the information right now, it's a huge amount of manual intervention required to analyze the data. I think in the future it could be automated, and AI technology could be a better solution to really analyze the data with certain patterns and that we develop under the AI technology. That really could save a lot of time, and at the same time we can develop more use cases and scenario based on that experience. So that's a one or two specific examples how the future technology could potentially influence threat hunting. The third one, we also call out the blockchain technology coming into the cybersecurity space gradually. And this is going to be heavily influencing in the threat hunting in the long-term perspective. So, and the last one we mentioned about, like I mentioned earlier, regulators, basically. They may really come and guide or put up some guidance to the enterprises to make sure that everyone takes care of threat hunting and having a right framework in place, having the right level of capability to build in so that we can minimize the digital risk from an enterprise and B2B standpoint. So this, we are kind of giving these kind of heads up to the enterprises and small, medium business to consider. And also the practitioners, right? I mean, like me and Abbas and Dan, everyone in the field, the practitioners to know about, hey, what's coming up? How do we leverage this technology uptrend to be part of our daily conversation, right? I think that's an important thing because it's kind of a dynamic nature that we need to keep up to date on this development and pick the right one. There are many more, but we can't really focus hundreds of technology, but take the most important one, maybe top 3, top 5 of them, and make it sure that's part of the daily conversation and educate the audience to make sure that they are taking some kind of actions on these trends.
And I'm going to guess there's a current trend taking place that's also going to take us into the future. And you kind of touched on it briefly, Abbas. And before I pass the ball to Diana for maybe her final thoughts on this, I know you mentioned assumed breach, which means, in my mind, zero trust. So I don't know if you touch on it in this book, but I know you're working on another book all about zero trust. And what's the connection? What's the story with that you're working on?
Yeah, so absolutely, we have touched upon a little bit on the threat hunting book about zero trust and what is the relationship between threat hunting and the zero trust at a very high level. And that's what triggered the idea about looking at the market. The zero trust has become now another digital transformation. Everyone talks about it, right? And when I looked at in the market, except for 1 or 2 books which are very network centric or a product centric, we couldn't find anything which could person can utilize and read end to end in terms of what zero trust is, what are the various framework about it, what can be done for the implementation, what lesson can be learned by doing implementation, what could be a project plan, and what are the other areas which we can look at within Zero Trust. So myself and Binil again got partnered together. We had a brainstorming in terms of what do you think of our next book? We got hooked on writing after the first book. And he said, yeah, let's write Zero Trust. That's an interesting topic. And I have been talking about Zero Trust for more than 2.5 years now after joining Microsoft. And all the lesson which I learned by discussing this kind of scenarios with our customer, I had lots of learning from the field. So we articulated that into a book, which is right now in progress. Hopefully by end of this month, the content will be finished. And it will go to our publisher, CRC Press, who is going to fine-tune and correct language and put in a nice flow. And hopefully early next year, we see that on the shelf talking about Zero Trust. You want to add anything, Binil?
No, I think it's an amazing journey. That's exactly what I want to say, because it's a very timely engagement between myself and Abbas. And I think this is like when Diana pointed out early, it's a needed conversation to have it. So threat hunting was a very interesting journey, and like we are going to take another one together, which is a Zero Trust. It's a wherever you go, you talk about security, cybersecurity. Zero Trust is one of the top 3 topics everyone asks. I think it's very timely engagement. That's I'm looking forward to see that happening.
There is a drinking game going on with that. Every time you say Zero Trust, you have
You should be there. Yeah.
Diana, I'll ask you to close this. And on your opinion, why is this book so important, both for practitioners and business owners and line of business to understand the risks that there are in the cloud?
At first, I got to say, you guys are amazing for going from one book to the next. Because when Ed and I finish a book, we're like, oh no, we need like a few years for a break. So your fortitude is very, very impressive. And it's a great, great, important book. Why the threat hunting book is, again, as Abbas and Binil have laid out, and Chris, their third co-author, the importance of right now attacks. You were asking, Marco, what can go wrong in the cloud? Well, where's all of our business happening? Where's our most sensitive data happening? Where are the workloads to fuel our business happening? They're all happening in the cloud. So in order to understand the risk to our business and our organization, we must be able to look for threats proactively, right? Because we know once we've got an indicator of compromise what to go look for, but we also have to look for those indicators of attack, like things like they're building persistence by creating new accounts in the directory. Other proactive tells that indicate that somebody's in the network. And remember, your network is now multi-cloud. And that's why, and there just was not a book that really covered that. So a great thank you from the community for the work that the authors, Binil and Abbas and Chris, who's not with us, have done, because that's why we need it. Our businesses are now multi-cloud. We must threat hunt to protect them multi-cloud.
Yep. I'm glad you said multi-cloud. I was going to say clouds with a Z. There's more than one. No, and I want to echo what Diana said. Thank you both, and Chris, who wasn't able to join us. But the 3 of you putting this together and getting your forward stamp from Diana is always a nice touch to have as well. I'm thrilled she was able to participate here. So this is really cool. I mean, seriously, for those listening, there's something in here for you. There's no question. Even if it's just the TTPs and looking at a framework and absorbing that, if that's where you are with your security program. But then obviously, if you want a full multi-clouds with the Z program that takes in all this stuff, this is the book to look at. So thank you all for sharing with us your journey to why you wrote this and how it's written and how folks can use it.
And there'll be notes.
There will. Links to the
link to the book, of course. Otherwise, don't take our words for it.
That's right.
Yeah, read it yourself.
Exactly.
Right on. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you.
Archer empowers organizations to manage multiple dimensions of risk on one platform with on-premises and software as a service offerings and quickly implement industry standard processes and best practices for advanced risk management maturity, informed decision making, and enhanced business performance. Learn more at archerirm.com. HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hitrustalliance.net. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.